We did it from Iron Boy to Iron Man, at least half Iron Man. That's what we completed. We set out to accomplish a goal. We achieved it. This is my tutorial of how to break a 6-hour Ironman in 3 months of training. Maybe for some of you endurance athletes, that's not that big of a feat. But for somebody who has never ran more than 8 or 9 miles continuous, this was quite the feat. So I'm going to catch you back up on the last video from signing up to how my training has been, sprint triathlon along the way, how race day went. And we're talking about Ironman North Carolina 70.3. We're about a week out and the body is feeling almost back to normal. I'll say, going back even to about 5-6 days out, my IT bands were still lit up. I was feeling a lot of lateral pain on the outside of my knees. Learned some lessons in equipment, fueling, definitely needing more salt, but overall really happy with the performance. So we're gonna catch you up on race day. So once I was at about 8 to 10 weeks out was when things started getting really serious. I started looking up some training plans and I was just following the idea of progressively overloading with the volume. I wanted to do one long run per week, keeping that around zone 2. During my training was a lot of humidity, so my heart rate was elevating. I was trying to keep that down. But the way that looked was I worked up to a long run that was typically Sunday or Monday, and that would, it got to 5 miles, 6 miles, then it was 7 miles, 8 miles, 9 miles, got it all the way up to 10 miles. And then after that, I decided to switch up the strategy a little bit and just go for accumulation of miles. And so my long run then turned into, doing like 3 or 4 miles in the morning, and then I would do a run club in the afternoon that was 5 miles. And so I did that to get myself up to 11 miles, skipped 12 and went straight to 13.1 miles that I accomplished in that one day. That built some confidence. These run clubs were really helping a lot. On the other days, I would drop in and work on some tempo work. So a lot of run clubs are typically like 3 miles. So a nice 5K that I could push that pace on. And I tried to get a little bit better each week. I also met a lot of other really cool people that were training for things, and people were really supportive of the goals. I was able to get some tips and meet some people that it just made the whole experience so much more fun. So outside of achieving the goals, the physical stuff that comes along with training, there's so many non-physical goals or benefits, I should say, from that alone time, that strong medicine of being able to listen to positive audio books and podcasts and be in my head to sort out some meditation. It got me out of my comfort zone where I wanted to be doing something and force myself to be there and be present. Bike rides, I was looking for 2 per week. All right, easy 20, Dawn Patrol. Now it's time to lace them up and go for a little run. Get used to running out of the bike. Feeling good, but legs feel fresh. I think after doing these longer rides, these shorter 20-mile types of rides just go by super quick. Although there's a lot of wind on the island. I think if you can get out here, beat it in the morning, it's not as bad. That's just resistance, baby. Resistance makes us grow. I was mixing in some indoor bikes, but I found that I would rather ride in, poor weather, even if it was windy or rainy, than ride inside. But you got to do what you got to do. In our race group that we had, the Iron Boys right here, we had a total of 4 of us, and my boy Jordan did all of his training on an indoor bike. So if he was traveling, he was riding on an indoor bike, like a Peloton style type of bike. And it was really impressive to see how well he did overall. For him to actually hit a 5:30, half marathon, which I'd like to think is pretty respectable for your first one. And here's some extra inspiration. My buddy Nick, who was part of our group of 4 that we were training with, I'd mentioned in the last video, he was struggling playing video games 5 hours a day, not sleeping well, back was hurting, battling some depression, was able to complete this half Ironman in 6 hours and 18 minutes. So to put it all together, battling some anxiety along the way, came out triumphant. And I just get incredibly inspired by that, knowing the impact that it has on your mental health by having a goal that you can strive for that adds that daily structure to your life
with all the other positive byproducts that come along with that, the mental, the social aspect, improving all the different biomarkers in your health and whatnot. But I thought that was really cool to see him come along. I'd mentioned that was part of the inspiration in the last video of choosing this goal. So be inspired, baby. Go out, sign up for something. Let's go.
So bike-wise, I was finding myself riding out by this beach route. Sometimes I would ride around my neighborhood that I lived in. It was only a 1.5 mile loop, so I'd have to do it a whole bunch. But when I was riding by the beach, it was very windy, typically one side or the other. And so rather than complaining about it, I just said, hey, this is gonna help with resistance. It will pay off in the long run, whether we have wind or we don't have wind. And I think that it did. Swim game gradually got a lot better, but I mean, even a few weeks out, I think I was still a little bit nervous about how that was going to, show up on race day, if I was gonna feel comfortable or confident, or if the nerves were gonna be running high. A thing that was an advantage for me was there was a sprint triathlon that was 1 month out. And the unique thing about the sprint triathlon was it was a 1,300 meter swim. And so in the half Ironman, it's close to about 2,000 meters for that 1.2 miles. And so I got to use a similar route. And I also ordered my wetsuit that I got to sample and try out. So progress was building up in the pool, just putting in that time.
Wetsuit feels smooth. I feel like I glide through the water a whole lot easier. So it certainly feels like it's gonna help with the speed and buoyancy. That's good. Well, it's a nice, easy swim. Just did 1,000 meters, but the suit makes a massive difference. So really excited to just be able to glide through the water. I hope that has some carryover when I'm not wearing the suit. But another little win, something to be excited about.
When I got the wetsuit, I was able to sample it in the pool, but also sample it in this sprint triathlon that was 1,300 meters. And it gave me so much confidence because how much more buoyant I was. So rather than my legs sagging, I then was able to keep at a better position and swim a whole lot more efficient. And I wasn't concerned about losing a little bit of time to take off the suit as I practiced just tearing that thing off. I wear a wetsuit for surfing a lot, and so that really wasn't much of a problem for me. It was sleeveless, so it did come out a whole lot faster, and there wasn't as much restriction to hold me back. So that local sprint triathlon that I did gave me a lot of confidence because I pushed the pace pretty well. On my training bike rides, I had been riding around 18 miles per hour, sometimes 19 miles per hour, but there was wind, so it was hard to average that higher pace that I liked. And in the sprint triathlon, I found myself going 20, 21 miles per hour. I think just like traffic, when you're driving, you tend to kind of move with traffic. But I also pushed myself knowing that in that sprint, I think the bike ride was, it was only about 12 miles or so, but it was nice to stay on that higher speed. I ended up finishing with over 20 miles per hour, and I felt like I was gonna have enough juice in my legs to really push myself on that 5K. So finished the bike on that sprint triathlon, and my goal was to say around 7 minutes or sub 7 on that 5K, which is faster than I was used to, but I was like, hey, let's just push through it. This is a short-term competition. And a fun thing about the race was that made it competitive in a fun way. As I'm finishing up my bike, there was a guy that was talking a little bit of trash because I passed him, and then before we came into the transition, he said, hey, I'll see you on the run, kind of insinuating that he was gonna pass me up. And he ended up passing me at the bike before the transition. I took my time, got my shoes on, and then kicked off running, and I saw him and passed this guy, and I saw my pace was like right around the low 7s, and I just did a friendly peace sign as I ran by him. And I think I said something like, see if you can keep up. That was a challenge to myself to like, all right, now you're gonna have to keep that promise that you made and continue to push yourself, which gave me a little bit of nerves, but I loved it. It's that performance game day mentality. So as I was pushing myself through that run on the 5K, another mile into it, mile and a half into it, I heard heavy breathing behind me, and I looked back, and it was the guy, and I think he planned on passing me, and I was just like, no, not happening. Threw the peace sign again, like Tyreek, and I took off. And I took off really quick at that point where I was like, oh, I hope I'm not gonna run out of gas, because I probably had another 3/4 of a mile or half mile to go. But by the time I was a half mile down, I noticed that, and then I just put my foot down on the gas, finished really strong, heard the crowd at the finish line cheering everybody on, which was just awesome energy. And so I felt like I did really well, and it was a big boost of confidence going into the training. And I took that right into more tempo work, more speed work, knowing that I was having a lot of fun with the running side of things.
We're gonna go after that 5:30 miles, see how much this endurance has paid off, these longer miles, this tempo work, this threshold work, and we're gonna push it. And it's good to be able to push outside that comfort zone because I know it's gonna be uncomfortable. But I made a little bet with my training partner for Ironman that we could run a 5:30 mile by a certain period of time before the race. And so it's just time to do what it do and do the damn thing. So let's see how it goes. That was tough. 5:44.
So, and taking my average paces from, 9 minutes to 8.5 minutes on my longer runs and trying to get them down closer to 8. And I worked up to where some of those 5-mile runs were, it'd be fun to try to keep that under an 8-minute pace. And so I just wanted to teach the body to move at a faster pace, and that made those longer runs a whole lot more enjoyable. The goal was to finish this half Ironman, but I figured, hey, I'm an athletic guy. The body looks cool. Let's see what it's capable of doing and really pushing ourselves to be able to progress. And that made this whole process a lot more gratifying. All right, so as we approach closer to race day in North Carolina, I wasn't exactly sure how this whole peak week would work, or trying to peak up to my, my best conditioning. But about the week before the final week of that taper down week was where my highest volume was. And, I had gone on 2 50-mile bike rides that were about a week apart, and they were fairly slow. I was riding with some people that just weren't riding very fast, but I got used to being in that position. I'm on a road bike, not a tri bike, all leaning over. And I built up my miles weekly. The most I ever ran in a week was that kind of peak week where I got up to 28 miles, which was a lot for me. Outside of that, I'd been in the low 20s or so. And I also did some track work with the local triathlon group, which was very fun, but I think I wore these flat shoes and I felt it in my calves. So about 8 days out from the race, my calves were on fire, and I was hoping I didn't have like a little bit of a strain, but I gave it some rest. And I took some BPC 157. It's a peptide, which I've used in the past. And I just used that for a few days, and I felt like the combination of that and some Epsom salt baths helped me recover. And that was peace of mind, knowing that I could run and I'd be ready to go. And swimming was feeling comfortable. Again, I think I had way more peace of mind knowing that I had the wetsuit. Tri-suit came on, gave that a try. And my plan was to wear the tri-suit under the wetsuit, and I would keep that on throughout the whole race. I was also experimenting with my nutrition a little bit more. My goal was to keep as much powdered liquid nutrition as I could. I got some tips from a guy at the gym who I saw wearing some Ironman stuff, and he said he liked the idea of using coconut water and squeezing some goos into the bottle so that it was all mixed together so you're not sipping those all throughout the race. Tried that out. That seemed to be a good strategy. And so I liked that. I would add extra electrolytes and amino acids if I was, riding or training on an empty stomach in the morning time. So getting to race day week, tapered off, made it pretty easy. Throughout this whole process, I was doing strength training. I'd say 2 to 3 dedicated sessions per week. As we got about a few weeks out, those were a lot less. I like to do full body workouts. So I was still doing some legs, but I noticed a few weeks out, it probably just wasn't worth it with how much bike riding I was doing. So I was trying to do it more for form and mobility, keeping good, strong core strength. But it was cool to keep my physique, maintained throughout this process. I did a body fat test prior to signing up for Ironman, and that was a little over 3 months out in June, or right when I signed up, compared to the week before. And I actually gained almost a pound of muscle and I lost almost a percentage of body fat. Now, I'm assuming I lost a little bit in my upper body and gained a teeny bit in my legs, or maybe didn't lose so much in my upper body. But the takeaway here is that you can maintain the physique, your body composition muscle-wise, with as little as 2 days per week of strength training. And they definitely were not long sessions. And so a tip I would give for people training for these endurance races is to still implement some of that strength training. I think it's gonna make you more insulin sensitive and help your body in your metabolic system, your where your metabolism is. It's gonna help maintain that a lot better so you don't lose as much muscle. And again, it doesn't require a whole lot, but I wanted to maintain that muscle and not look like a runner. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I like my physique and my strength, and I don't think I lost a whole lot until after the race, where I feel like my body's still playing catch up. Some people say it takes 2 to 3 or 4 weeks before your body's back to 100%, and I believe that. Okay, now back to race day week in North Carolina. One of my best friends came out, about 4 or 5 days before the race, and then another one of my buddies flew out, all the way across the country, which was really cool. So the excitement was in the air. Got to see all the setups for Ironman, which, by the way, I just have to say they did such an incredible job setting everything up. So if there was about 2,700 participants in Ironman, there was another 1,300 volunteers that were helping with transporting people, moving the bags around, spotting people on the swim, and so much more. And so even though it was kind of complicated with having these different transition areas, like you had to have your swim stuff ready, and then your bike set up, down by the beach area, and then you had to have a bag that was ready to go and transported back to transition 2 where your running shoes were gonna be. So it was a lot of drop-offs, but they made it really smooth. So the energy was cool, got to go down, check in, you could just feel the buzz in the air. The few days before started getting really cold. We had a cold front come in where the lows were as low as 45, 46, 47 with the wind chill, and the highs were dropping down to the 60s, which is relatively cold for this period, but the water stayed a little bit warmer. It was starting to drop down a bit. It was wetsuit, permitted for what it was worth, and so we knew we were gonna be able to wear wetsuits. And then it started to get a little bit warmer a couple days before. We did some of the shakeout stuff. We went to Run Club for the last time before the race, which was fun to do another little 5K shakeout the day before the race. And then we wanted to try out, get in the water. And the mornings were super cold, but we wanted to reenact how it was gonna be. Some of us had a little bit of anxiety about getting in that cold water. Plus, was it gonna be choppy? How is the visibility gonna be? So tested the wetsuit out. That gave me at least peace of mind. The water temperature was warmer than the outdoor temperature, so it was neat. Race day, you had some options to get on some shuttles as early as 3:30, 3:45 a.m., which is crazy, even though the race didn't start until first light around 7:10 a.m. We decided to we were very thankful we had a friend that was able to drop us off in the morning, and we got there about an hour and a half prior to the swim start. All of our bags ready, we had to pack all of our supplies, our nutrition. Got out to the, where the swim start was, and the energy was wild. It was live. There was, music playing super loud. You got AC/DC going, and then they split everybody into heats. And so based on how long you thought your swim was gonna take, you would go into a certain heat. And, we were with a couple of my buddies. One of them was a pretty competent swimmer, and he was saying, hey, I'm gonna go to the next group up. And I said, hey, let's just jump in and make it happen. So probably went a little faster than what I thought I was going to do, but it all worked out. We had a little bit of a draft or current that worked in our favor, but finished the swim in 32 minutes compared to, I was estimating closer to about 40 minutes. But it was really cool the way we were getting ready. We'd go down about 3 people at a time, would hop in the water. And then once we went in, it was game time. I was fortunate that I didn't really feel that much anxiety, and was just focusing on moving, extending my strides until I had some space. And then I just tried to pick up the consistent speed, got hit and whacked a few times, kind of a unique route that you had to, take a right turn and then a left and then another right, but it all worked out. And moving along, eventually my goggles were a little bit foggy, but I could see where people were finishing up. So my energy, adrenaline was super high. And as we had that strong finish, coming out of the water, I felt just exhilarated getting that part out of the way. Now it's a little bit windy outside, a little bit cold still in the morning. Air temperature at this point is probably, low 60s. Then we head out, get ready to hop on the bike. But I wanted to make sure the transition run from the swim to the bike was, about 400 or 500 meters at least. So you run over there as you're taking the suit off, and then you have to make sure that you take everything from your swim and get it into the bag, your transition bag, so they can get it to the end of the race. You have to have everything cleaned up. So hopped in my biking shoes, socks, and then put my goos and packs in my pouches of my tri-suit, and then in my bike, I had my water bottles ready to go, hopped on and was out. Felt so good just to get moving, although I probably had goosebumps from the wind and the coldness for like the first hour of the race. But energy was amazing, started passing some people, playing catch up. I was on a road bike, there was a lot of tri-bikes out there, but I was still able to manage I was averaging above 18 miles per hour. Started out a little bit slower because we had all that headwind, up to about 19 miles per hour. And then as we got going, turned up, outside this freeway, and from there it was just settling in, feeling good, nice and consistent, not pushing it too hard. At one point, I had to take a pee break on the side of the road. It was kind of funny. I'd seen someone coming out of the woods, and it happened to my buddy Jordan. So caught up with him for a little while. He was on a tri-bike, and so he was able to get ahead of me a good bit. And I didn't know where my other buddies were. I was confident I was ahead of one of them, but I thought another one of them might have been far ahead. So that was like a little carrot being dangled that I was like, he's gonna run out of gas, so I gotta catch up with him. So bike overall went well, ended up finishing around like 19.4 miles per hour, averaged out, even with a break to go pee. So finishing the bike, coming back into the transition for the run, energy was high. I felt pretty good. I was taking some goos that all had a little bit of caffeine, probably consumed 200 milligrams of caffeine through that period of time. But then I had to go pee again so bad. So I wasn't even able to take off my running, my bike clips. I went to the transition, just sprinted to the Porta-John, went pee for like 2 minutes, probably felt like 5 minutes, got my running shoes on, and I felt great. Came out, there was crowds of people cheering people on, saw some people I recognized, and I came out probably a little cocky. I think I was looking at like 7:35, 7:40 paces for the first couple miles, hit third mile, and I started feeling some cramps. And so I was like, oh, let's just keep it under 8, around 8. But then after that third mile, there was a little bit of a hill, and so we started in different heats. I saw the people that were finishing up the run, like all these elite people, and I saw the looks on their faces like, oh, this is gonna be a long journey. And then it was like pre-cramps in my calves and my hamstrings, my quad and my groin, IT band starting to fire up. And so a lesson from that was I knew I needed more salt. I had some salt tabs, a whole bunch of stuff packed in the back of my running pockets. And so I was just trying to take anything that I could. And then after we hit about 3 miles, there was stands almost every mile or two, aid stations. And I would stop and grab a goo, looking for stuff with caffeine, everything to give me energy. And I noticed I was getting a lot of carbs and a lot of sugar and some water, but I was not getting salt. And it was like a game of avoiding cramps, and I had to adjust my form. And so I was like, this is gonna be a long run, but we're still going to get it. The goal was to get under that 6-hour mark, and I was looking at my clock or my watch, and I was like, I know it's gonna be under a 1:30 finish time or whatever. As long as I'm under that, I'm good. And I started pacing it out, and I was like, all right, let's just keep all the miles under 8:30. And then the cramps were coming, and I was like, okay, gotta make sure I stay under 9. Hovered a few around 9. I was like, just don't let them go any higher. A few of them hovered a little bit higher when I had to stop and stretch for a minute, but just kept pushing. Saw some other cool people, friends that were holding up signs. So at about 1 mile out, the goal was just to not stop. And there was a point where I felt a cramp coming so much in my hamstring, and I was bending over to stretch, and this nice young girl next to me said, don't stop, keep going. And so I did, kept going, and managed to adjust my form a bit, doing more of like a shuffle type of run. And then that same young lady, she was starting to slow down. And so I said, hey, if you're gonna cheer me on, right back at you. And I was able to tell her to keep on going. And we finished strong for, the last 3/4 of a mile. As we got to 0.5 left, I saw on my watch, I said, hey, this is only 2 times around the track. Let's light it up and finish strong. And that's what we did. As we got to the finish line, you hear the
cheering. There's a big tunnel, and it was just amazing to see the energy as you're coming through. And so picked up the gas, actually got a little emotional coming through the line, just thinking all the training that I had done, waking up all those early mornings, everything building up to this moment felt so incredibly special coming through. Heard people and recognized some faces coming through, seeing some friends. And so it was just exhilarating with so much joy. And also, I think I had a smile on my face for more than half of the race. I just couldn't help but smile. And I thought it was fun to see the positive energy and smiling at everybody along the way. So good times. Then I passed through the finish line, didn't know my time. I knew it was under 6, and I saw a friend and caught up talking, and I asked if they knew my time, and it said 5:33. And so I was absolutely pumped. My A goal that I had was 5:30, which was like a little bit out of reach the way that I thought about it. And then my B goal was closer to that 6. So to be able to achieve that felt good. Body felt beat up, but tolerable, kind of what I expected, not too uncomfortable. I was thinking like, wow, this would be really hard to imagine doing a longer distance throughout that run, but I would also learn a lot through this process of how to do better nutrition. Also have a tri bike, so I know I would be able to average a couple miles per hour faster, and maybe that position would be better on my legs overall. So I would have more juice in my legs and not be cramping up. So overall, this was such an incredible, fun process and journey, especially getting to share it with some friends. I could see doing this annually, maybe doing some destinations, but I feel thankful that this was in the hometown of Wilmington, where I currently live, and it was such a fun experience, and I feel very proud of setting out on that goal to accomplish, especially in that set time. And if you're thinking about signing up for something, just do it. It makes it real. Just sign up, put it on the map. I can't speak highly enough of the power of pre-commitment and the accountability that you have. It is so worth it in so many ways. There's just so many positive byproducts. So hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any sort of questions or any way that I can be a resource. Until the next challenge, I will see you soon.